Alright, so this is the coding walkthrough video for Starbeast 1.4. Now, this is a quality of life update, kind of like 1.2, and basically adds a bunch of things that help with the gameplay and make it a bit more smooth, essentially. So what I'll do first is hit play, wait for it to load, and show you what's changed. Now, as you can see, that's probably the biggest feature we've got in this update, which is a lock-on feature. Ooh. I'll explain the rotation thing in just a sec. But yeah, so lock-on is the biggest feature of this update, and it basically makes it easier to transport between orbital pillars, because before you had to look directly at them, at the orbital pillar, in order to transport, and you couldn't quite tell if the ray was hitting the orbital platform or not. So with this, it helps a lot, because you can see exactly when you're locked on. So if we just head over to the orbital platform here, sprint a little bit, go head up here, and then yeah, it makes transporting a hell of a lot easier essentially. And look again, and down we go. And as you might have noticed as well, ooh, come on, yeah, as you might have noticed as well, the rotation is now counterclockwise on the orbital platforms. Previously you were going this way around, whereas now it's been changed to go the opposite direction. That's mainly for gameplay purposes essentially, because you start off up there, so you'll come around to the right and then zip around to the right and head up to there. It's to make transporting a bit easier, to be honest, because the angle before kind of got in the way, whereas the counterclockwise movement now is a lot easier. And then one final edit we've done to the pillars this week is sometimes, as you can see here, the player will not turn back into Leo from the particle system we've got going on here when he transports. So to solve that, if you tap into the pillar, he changes back. So that's basically like, it's a bit of a fail-safe kind of patch thing. If he doesn't change back for whatever reason, then tapping into the orbital platform will change him back into Leo. Transport over here, because most of the time he's supposed to change back. Obviously not here. There we go, tap it, and there we go. Yeah. So it's a failsafe essentially in case current transport, the Boolean, doesn't disable itself. Yeah. So the last thing that we've changed in this update, if I can just get clear of this orbital platform, there we go, is the rotation of the player. Now previously, if you went down a hill, he would bounce a lot, which was obviously a bit of a problem movement-wise. So what we've done is changed up the movement code essentially, so he doesn't bounce anymore. And as you can see, rotation up and down hills is a lot smoother. The only problem with it is there is quite a large bug where if you sprint or go fast, essentially, it did it a little bit just there. Yeah, there we go, yeah, he does that. Just tries to launch himself up into the air. Now, this is a problem with the new movement system, and we haven't figured out a fix for it yet. Hopefully we'll get that done in 1.5. But aside from that, ooh, come on. Anyway, aside from that, the new rotation is a lot better than the previous one. Just need a fix for that particular problem there. But there's no more bouncing, so far so good essentially. So now what I'm going to do is walk through the actual code for the changes we've had this week. I've just forgotten a change. Oops. Yeah, so one of the biggest changes actually we've made this week, which I've completely forgotten about, is because the player can sometimes clip through the map, which has happened a lot before. Let's try and get him to do it. There we go. So he's clipped through the map, and we're falling. And what we've done, essentially, is added that. A little layer beneath the map that encompasses the entire map, that basically means when the player hits it, they are restored to the full map. So it means you don't have to restart the game if you clip through the map for whatever reason. Because the problem with it is a lot of the colliders and things are a bit buggy, because the map is so large. So obviously we're going to go through and try and fix them as we find them, but we're probably never going to get all of the problems with the map, so we just added that underneath as a bit of an insurance layer, essentially. If you do manage to clip through the map, then that layer underneath will restore you back to back on top, essentially. So with that in mind, here's how we coded it. It's pretty simple, to be honest. If the reset pos, which is the name of the massive layer under the map, if it collides with a player, then change the player's Y position to 1300, and it just basically elevates them up above the map so they can fall gently back down onto it. And then, so if we go here, I'll talk about the new changes that we've got. This is the rotation one here. Basically, if current transport is true, and if you're orbiting, essentially is what this all means, then constrain the player on all the axes. So, like with the previous update, if the player is transporting, you don't want them rotating around, like flipping around and making it difficult to transport and maneuver on the orbital platform. So this essentially freezes them on all axes, so they don't do that. However, if current transport is false, or he's not orbiting, then unfreeze him on the x-axis, so that he can compensate for hills, essentially. So that's the new movement code, which we call in update, which is somewhere about, yeah, here it is. Alright, so that's the rotational direction. And now, what we will do is have a look at the next couple of things. Yeah, here we change the orbital platform movement from clockwise to counterclockwise. It's just literally a simple case of changing the 1 to a -1, going the other direction, essentially. Again, a pretty simple change. And we also added it so that not only does the player change back if current transport is false, change back from the particle system, he'll also change back if you collide with anything tagged with orbital, and the only things tagged with orbital are the orbital platforms. So that's essentially the failsafe I showed you earlier, where if the player for some reason doesn't change back from Leo, from the transport particle into Leo, then just colliding with the orbital platform will do that. And then lastly, the lock-on feature that I showed you earlier. And again, that code for that's pretty simple. If the player has a current target, and bear in mind the player can only target the orbital platforms because they're on a separate layer, which is down here. So yeah, if the player finds something that's on the orbital platform layer, it'll be set as the current target. And if the player has a target, then enable the HUD element image, which is that one down here, the lock-on image. And if the player doesn't have a target, then disable it. And what that essentially means is that the element will only appear, come on, there we go, the element will only appear if you're actually locked on, or looking at an orbital platform, essentially. So yeah, those are the changes for this week. This was a quality of life update, basically, before we tackle some of the major problems with the game. Namely, the rotational system we need to have a massive look at, to be honest. And then that'll probably be in version 1.5.